Second, because this is always a live broadcast that we do on Thursdays, let me give it just a minute so we do get connected to the internet before we start yapping. And it looks like I think that's about time.
Okay.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome here for the first time. If you're here for the first time, who are we and what are we doing? Well, first of all, my name is Christopher, and this delightful lady.
I'm Angela.
And that's Angela. And we are the little channel called Dinosaur Omelette. And these Thursday night lives, if you haven't been to before, we try to do educational topics where we have open Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments. We will get to them during the live or thereafter if it's airing later and you're watching this. I'll do like a little intro here for 5 minutes if you want to skip forward and get to what we're talking about, which is going to be raising quail chicks for adult production, peak production. So healthy adults. So that's going to be the subject tonight. That's important, yes?
Yes.
We're talking about that because it's getting right around the time everybody's going to start ordering quail chicks, chicken chicks, right around this time of year, I guess in another month or so.
Yeah,
People start going crazy for getting their chickens and their chicks. So we want to discuss these very important topics so you can have a successful breeding or hatching or growthing. What did you call it? Brooding? We want to have healthy animals.
Growing them well.
I would like to present to you down below in our description of this fabulous video is this free, awesome PDF. What is it? Raising Quail Chicks with Confidence, Practical Guide. So, oh, hey there, Steve. How are you, man? Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. So if you guys are wanting to do quail chicks, check this out. It's in the description. It's free. It's PDF. I wrote it so it'd be very easy to print and understand on how to set up your brooder and have these things thrive and grow properly until their adult stage, yes?
Yeah.
Anything else important? So if you're new and you're wondering about us, we're a small hatchery in southern Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. We had a lot of, well, we didn't have a lot. We have a little bit of snow today. It is a winter time. Doing well, thank you. Awesome. We're talking about quail chicks and healthy little critters tonight, Mr. Steve, our friend who's down in the comments. Yeah, so we're a small hatchery in southern Lancaster County. Angela raises top quality silky chickens.
Yep,
right?
I raise them specifically for pets. And yeah, people love them because they're very calm, docile, fluffy, fun to pet and hold, and great for the kids to enjoy.
And another thing we do here is we make a chicken feed, my little dinosaur feed. So we do talk about like animal nutrition, poultry nutrition, which it's a little, the way we think about nutrition for an animal is very like, we think of it as human nutrition, like what we eat, we kind of transpose that onto animals, like kind of our intuition. And a lot of that's okay, but a lot of it's not. There's things that are very specific to poultry. So we do talk about poultry nutrition and health in some of these lives frequently enough so you guys can have a better understanding on what to feed the animals. I mean, I watched a video on YouTube, I told you about this, where they're feeding the chickens nothing but beans and macaroni, all right? Because it's keeping them alive and it's cheap. Well, okay, that's great. I mean, if they're managing to go foraging and they're free range, that's fine. But an animal that's restricted to a run and they don't have any food, if they're getting just, what do you call it, like beans and macaroni, it's nutritively empty. They're not really getting what they need, which are some essential amino acids. But,
and then they're going to gain weight as well. So gaining excess weight and not having their daily nutrients fulfilled can affect their production and health, vibrancy, immune system, all that stuff.
Yeah, not rocket science. Pretty much the same thing the humans deal with. The humans eat poorly. They don't treat themselves right. Their health is affected. Same with the poultry.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't want to go into much for that. I think we're done with our opening. We did our few minutes. Yeah, usually 5 minutes introduction for people to come in. And then we'll start talking about our topic tonight, which is raising quail chicks for peak adult production. Angela W. How important is it, and we're going to be talking about quail chicks, because we do raise quail chicks, but these are gaining a lot of popularity. People are raising them because they require much less resources for a person to keep as opposed to a chicken. So they're gaining popularity, especially now that eggs are $500,000 for a dozen. There's a little crazy.
And we're specifically talking about the jumbo quail. They're the largest variety of the Coturnix quail. So then you can have the larger eggs, and if you're raising them for meat, then they have a nice meaty body. Correct. So the chicks are going to be bigger than the standard size quail chicks. But yeah.
So Angela W., how important is it that our quail chicks are treated properly in the brooder in those first formative weeks of life? This is my invisible microphone.
Well, their growth rate is pretty fast in general. So pretty much every day is important in the life of a jumbo quail because they grow very quickly. Yeah. So each week they're going to double in size. Yes. So yeah, you want to. So if you're hatching your own chicks and you're putting them in a brooder, your first few days will look a little different than if you're buying chicks that are already a couple days old and then adding them to your brooder. Yeah,
we actually sell the chicks and we don't let them go until they're 3 days old?
Yeah, 3
just to make sure they're healthy and thriving. Anyway, it's not a sales pitch, but we want the animals to be healthy and strong. Mm-hmm. So starting strong and healthy is very important because these animals, if you're raising them for meat or eggs, their output and their production is going to be closely linked to their young chick days. Are they being fed properly? Are they getting the proper nutrition? Are they growing to full size? Very simple stuff to take care of and to avoid the problems with. You just need to be aware of it. So when you take care of your animals, you're feeding them properly. Okay, a lot of people are new to this. So if you're new to quail chicks, they're very easy to take care of. And there are just a few simple points you need to be aware of. They grow very rapidly compared to a chicken. They're very quick growing. They're going to double in size, I guess, for the first couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're going to double in size until about 4 weeks, and then their rate of growth will start slowing down, but will still be steady to about 5 weeks. Then they're finished growing at 10 weeks, so they'll still be growing, but it won't be as visually noticeable from that point on.
Right. So now the 3 things I think we're going to talk about, which are most important, are your brooder setup, the brooder conditions, their feed, and their behavior / health concerns. All right. So brooder setup for your chicks, it is important. What are we looking for to have a healthy brooder? So what are we looking at? Space, temperature, what's the issues?
You're wanting it to be, obviously you want it to be tidy and clean.
Tidy and clean.
You want it to be warm, and this is like their little nursery. So they don't have a mother that they're going to be snuggling up underneath for warmth. So you're going to provide some sort of heat source. There are different types of heat sources. Some people use the brooder plates that are you can raise them a few inches. What? Oh. And some people will use heat lights, heat lamps, but you're going to want to have warmth regulated by a heating device, heating element. You're going to want to have, if you're hatching your chicks and you're putting your chicks in the brooder from the incubator, you're going to want to have a non-slip surface on the floor. So a textured paper towel or pad or something down. If you're buying chicks that are several days old, you can have shavings down because their legs are stronger and they can handle the movable substrate on the floor.
Right.
You're going to want to have food and water.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the heat to make it easy to remember. So mama hen, chicken or quail, they're providing heat for the babies. The babies are small. Their bodies cannot hold heat as easily. They lose heat quickly. So they don't have mama hen with them. So we're supplementing the heat. That is important.
Yes.
That temperature. And perhaps, too, you should keep in mind if you're ordering chicks in the wintertime, you want to be very, very careful. Ordering birds in the winter, especially chicks, they're coming through the mail and they can be susceptible to the chill, the cold. You may wind up with a box of not functioning chicks
if they're delayed in the shipping process at all. The shipper tends to put a heating pad in the box, and they might require a minimum of 15 chicks or something like that to ensure that the chicks are staying warm. That sort of thing. But they don't. Heaters. But quail chicks are not normally, day-old quail chicks are not normally shipped because they're just so
too
small
tiny.
And fragile.
Yeah. So be aware of that. Their temperature is important. now that is a common question because people do ask, should we keep, is there a temperature inside of the brooder? The brooder, technically like around 95 degrees, but you're not going to be measuring the temperature. The heat's going to be provided by the heat lamp or the heating element, the heat pad.
Yeah, and it's very important to watch the behavior of the chicks. So the temperature is really important for several reasons. Obviously, you want to make sure that their body temperature.
I have heat lamp. I forgot I have
Yeah.
props.
Their body temperature is kept proper so that they're not chilled, and then that will jeopardize their well-being. And yeah, but also if the light is too high up. Oh, here, let me. Oh, you have a check.
Here, you hold your little chick. So here's my high lamp. What happens with a high lamp, ladies and gentlemen, in a brooder? If your lamp is too high.
If it's too high, your babies are going to be right under it, and they're not going to venture away, because if it's too high, that means there's not as much heat getting to them.
Yeah, they want to
so
get
they're going to feel
the
cold if they go too far away from underneath the light.
So they're staying.
So they're going to be huddled, and if you have your feeder and your water over here away from them, they're not going to venture out to the feeder or the water to get their sustenance. So that's not good. And if it's too low,
and if you put it too low, you're going to cook the little dudes.
So they're going to be everywhere except under the light. And you want them to be comfortable, not avoiding a certain area. What you want is that light to be positioned properly so that they feel happy to just maneuver and go all around the whole area without hindrance to the cold or extreme heat.
You're a very good puppeteer.
And
so what's the height? So these are common. A lot of you guys, I wouldn't recommend these just because they're a fire hazard and they get hot. But so what's
pretty
the
much
height?
just you're gonna watch them because there's different things that is gonna affect the heat in your brooder. Depending on the material of your brooder, whether it's a plastic tub, a wooden bin, a metal bin, glass, those types of materials are going to hold heat differently in this space. And the height of the walls, short walls will allow the heat to come out much easier versus tall walls. The heat's going to stay in there more. So you're going to, it's just important to monitor the chicks' behavior if they're moving around freely without hesitation, and that's going to tell you the temperature for your brooder is adequate for the chicks.
Right, and the temperature is not just pertaining to their, keeping them warm. Like she was talking earlier, it's affecting their behavior. So if the temperature, and especially the lighting or the heating element, is improper, the birds may not be getting access freely to food. They may not be feeding or eating, which they should be. Because remember, they're growing really quick. So if the light is in a position which is prohibiting them from getting to food because it's too hot or it's too cold, you want to be aware of that. Because that is important. That's going to kind of shy them away. And if you're missing a day or two of eating, that's hugely impactful for these birds in that first week.
So make sure that the water source and heat in the food source isn't too far. It's close enough for them to feel in a comfortable range to reach it, temperature-wise. And then let's see, you're going to need to monitor the heat as well, because depending on where you have your brooder, whether it's in a room in your house or basement, depending on the temperature of that space, that outer space, that will affect their heating needs as well. So if the area is comfortable, like 70 degrees or something like that, then you may need to adjust if you're using a lamp or a plate, you might have to adjust the height every couple of days, because they're going to grow really quickly. Their metabolism is faster, so they do produce a little more heat than chicken chicks do, and they're going to start growing feathers quickly. So you're going to have to watch them and adjust the heat, because they might not need as much each couple of days. But if it's in a cooler area, you might not have to adjust it as frequently.
Now, do they need light to get around to see where the food is?
They need light.
So how long do I keep lights on for these chicks to see?
For the jumbo quail.
And is the heating light sufficient if I'm using one of those?
Yes, a red light would be
sufficient. So a red heating light would be sufficient. But if I'm using a heating plate, I should supplement light.
Yes, and still it is good to use red light, because it just it kind of calms them more. And if ever anybody ends up with some sort of injury, or if they see it helps calm them. They
So-
can tend to peck.
None of these
at
bright
things.
white lights. I should probably
Yeah.
using a red light bulb
It's best to use a red light.
or a filter on a regular light.
Yeah.
Something to subdue the.
Yeah, to keep them calm. And what was I gonna say? Darn.
We're talking about light, chicken light or quail light.
Oh, you said how long? So
Yeah, how long do they need the light?
Yeah.
Like, should I keep it on the whole time or?
So
Weeks?
jumbo quail, again, it depends on the space that you have them in while they're in this brooder stage. If you're going to have them in there until they're ready to go outside to their permanent space, then let's see. If your light is also your heating device, then you're gonna want to make sure that this temperature is pretty warm. At 2 weeks old, they're going to be really feathered out. They're not going to be completely feathered out, but at 2 weeks old,
they're almost there.
Yeah. If the nighttime temperatures are like 60s,
Summertime.
yeah. So if they're indoors, then you can turn off the light completely at night, because you're helping their body start to get acclimated to regular, daylight hours, nighttime hours.
And all this stuff, guys, again, if you forget, it's in the bottom of this description in this video. All this information's in here.
Mm-hmm. And if your space that you have them in is warmer, if it's, if it is like 70 degrees or something like that, you can even start turning the light off a little bit, a couple days earlier than 2 weeks. But the reason why, it's not just to acclimate them to get prepared for the outdoor light, it's also because they don't need to be eating all night long and going to the bathroom all night long. That's not natural anyway. So it's helpful for you as well to have them start acting like a normal cycle. So around 2 weeks or just a couple days before, you can turn the light off or make it so it's dark but temperature comfortable at night, and then they'll go to sleep instead of eat all night and go to the bathroom all night.
So we're growing fast in the first couple weeks, and then we're establishing a circadian rhythm that's kind of like the outdoors. Mm-hmm. So when they transition, they're not in a stressful what's going on state.
Yeah, and then once,
because it's already stressful once they switch out of their living quarters.
Yeah, and if the nighttime temperature is outside, if it's summertime or a warm temperature where you are when they're at 2 weeks old, if it's 60 degrees at night, you can put them outside already. Yeah. And then 3 weeks old, they can go outside if it's 40 degrees holding at night. Yeah.
All right, cool. Remember, guys, if you have any questions, pop them in the bottom. We like questions. All right, so we talked about lighting, temperature, space that they need. Oh, what's important, too, that we always talk about is placement of the waterer and the feeders so they don't get trapped.
Yeah, so the quail...
This is important if you're raising quail chicks.
Yeah, if you have experience with quail, then you will be familiar with the concept that if there's a way to unalive themselves, they will find it. So... they're like little ants. The chicks are like ants. They climb and crawl and run all over the place. And if you have your feeder container or water container just like close to the wall, and they're able to get themselves between the feeder and the wall and get stuck, they will. So it's important to make sure there's space around the feeders and waterers, anything in the brooder, so that they can safely get around it, not get stuck or pinned, so that they're safe, because they're little babies and they're not very,
And they're going to be going to the waterers and feeders because your heating element is in the appropriate setting, so they're not going to be cold in a cold pocket.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing, too, with the waterers, we don't want the little chicks getting wet, so we would be using a special water system, or we fill up the waterer with pebbles or something.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of using, there are quail water dishes that twist onto the regular water reservoir. I think it's about an inch or less, the ring around that the water sits in.
Where they get access.
Yeah, and what that means is they can't get in it. They can only put their face in and drink, but they can't put their body in it. So It's just important to make sure that they're not getting wet, because especially in the first couple days, because if they get wet, it can be challenging for them to heat back up, and it can be something that creates fatality if they are they're wet. Yeah, the temperature risk.
Yeah, plus, guys, you want to have a waterer that they're not hopping in and contaminating every 2 seconds. If you have a waterer that they're not going to be able to hop into to get wet in the first place, they're not going to be tracking quail leavings in there, filling up the water constantly, which you don't want. You want to keep the water clean. So appropriate waterer, keep everything away from the edges of the brooders so the chicks don't get stuck. And you should be pretty golden with that.
And make sure to monitor that they have water at all times, obviously, and feed. They should be on a high protein
Well, that's what we're talking about next.
Okay. Well, just before that, then make sure to tidy up the water dishes, the water container parts, and it really ideally once or twice even a day. Rinse out the water dish part and even use like a little toothbrush, just a quick scrub, because it'll develop a film and grossness. I mean, because there's animals in there and you want to keep it clean because you want them to be healthy and vibrant.
Yep. One last thing, I have a question. So you guys are probably wondering, how often do I have to clean this brooder, and how do I clean the brooder? Do I have to take all the chicks out and put them in a box?
And then clean the whole thing.
Yeah.
No,
so what do I do?
So like I mentioned earlier, if you're hatching your own chicks and you're taking them from the incubator to the brooder, you're going to have paper towels or pad down for them to be able to stand and grip the floor so that their legs are going to be stable and not slipping out from underneath them, and they'll be able to create strong, healthy legs, the muscles very quickly.
So a grippy paper towel floor for how long?
Just for about 3 days.
So their muscles develop that quickly?
Yeah, very quick. Even shorter than that, but you'll leave the paper towels down. And even if you're buying your chicks, and you're putting them in, they're already a couple days old, I do recommend putting down something like paper towels or something, because unless your brooder is not slick, if it's coarse like a wood or something, but if it's like a tote or plastic or glass, then that's going to be slippery. So put something down like paper towels first, and then you put shavings down, like pine shavings. And the paper towels will keep the shavings more stable.
This is when they're day olds, the new ones? Or is the shaving coming?
So after about day 3 or 4, then you add shavings on top of the paper towels.
So I don't have to take the paper towels out?
No, just leave them there. And you're waiting, if you're hatching your own chicks, putting them in, you're not adding the shavings right away, because shavings will move around and that will create instability, and that could affect their legs. They'll have a hard time standing upright proper initially. But if they're 3 or 4 days old, then you can add the shavings. And then as the shavings begin to get soiled, not too soiled, but as you can start seeing that they're getting soiled, just add another layer of pine shavings over top.
That's sort of like a deep litter?
It's a deep litter, and you're just going to keep doing that. Going to keep adding and adding. You don't have to take the chicks out. Just keep adding. You don't have to worry about emptying the bin, emptying the brooder until after the chicks come out completely, permanently. Then you can do it.
And taking the chicks out, that's going to be stressful for them anyway. If you're taking them in and out, because you take them out, their body temperature is going to be adjusted to a box, whatever you're sticking them in, and then you bring them back. And that'll stress them out, and that can affect their feeding behaviors and feeding habits, which you don't want to do. You want to keep the animals pretty consistent.
And there are other types of bedding substrates. There's like a hemp or something like that. I think the dust is low, but I like the pine shavings. You don't want to use cedar shavings, though. Cedar shavings, they can burn their feet. Really not good. Not good for animals. It's not good for rodents either. I don't know why they have guinea pigs and hamsters pictured on the cedar shavings.
It smells nice. I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, that's pretty much, I don't want to go too much about brooder like we're building a rocket ship here. But keep it clean. Download the PDF that's attached to this thing about chick care, because really it's simple stuff. And I wanted you guys to be able to know how to do this. So we wrote that so it would be very, very simple. All right, so brooder, we discussed brooder. Moving on to feed. Now, it's important that they get the appropriate feed. And they're, because we discussed before, these little birds are very rapid growing. They start out teensy tiny, and then they're like this by week 2, and then like they just grow,
they're
grow,
doubling in
grow.
size.
So I guess they eat a keto-friendly diet and low calorie. Is that right? No.
Yeah, they need
No.
high protein.
They're getting jacked, so they eat a
to-
lot of protein.
Yeah, to sustain that rapid growth. And it's important because if they don't have enough protein, and obviously there's other nutrients within the feeds, but protein that's around 30%, 30% protein is important.
28 to 30% protein. Game bird feed, as we always tell people. This way it's easy to remember.
And it's important because their adult life, permanent, once they finish growing at 10 weeks old, their adult size can be affected. They can be stunted in their growth if they are not fed properly, if they're not fed the right amount of protein and nutrients.
Hey, Dan.
And, and if they're not able to eat as much as they need. So they should always have food available.
Yeah, so 30% protein for these guys for how many weeks? What is that period? Is it the full 10 weeks until they're full adults?
Yeah, so we recommend giving them a high protein until 10 weeks, yes. However, at age 6 weeks, the hens are going to start laying eggs. They're going to just start the process of laying eggs. And it is important that they're getting calcium. And that's a layer feed typically has the calcium in it. So we do recommend doing 2 parts. One part, the high protein, and the other part, a layer feed, and mixing it. So then you can transition them. Once you get to the 10 weeks, they're half and half of high protein and layer feed. Then at that 10 weeks, you can just go straight to the layer feed.
Right. So
and the reason why we keep them on the somewhat half of the feed mix high protein is because they are still growing. So at 10 weeks, they're finished. And you just don't want to stunt that growth.
So again, the quick short version of this. We're raising the chicks in the brooder. We're giving them high protein. They're big now. They're healthy. They can go outside. It's springtime. It's about 40 degrees at night. So at 3 weeks or so.
3 weeks. If it's 40 degrees at night, 3 weeks.
Tired of taking care of these chicks in the house. So I put my chicks out at 3 weeks old because it's been about 40 degrees at night in the spring. It's pretty stable, but we're still feeding them high protein. They're getting a high protein diet until that 6-week mark.
And just to finish on the when can they go outside, if it's winter temperatures, like lower than 40 degrees, then they can go out at 4 weeks old. It really, they're now padded with meat as well as feathers. So they're more insulated, so they can go out in wintertime.
Back to my feed thing, because I'm going to forget.
Sorry.
So at 6 weeks old, we're transitioning. They've been eating high protein so they can grow big because they're quick growers. But at 6 weeks, the females are going to start laying eggs soon. And then you develop appropriately, so they're going to start absorbing calcium. You know, we did a video a couple weeks ago about egg production, and did you know that a significant percentage, I think it's like 30% of calcium in an egg actually comes from the bones, from a bone reserve in hens. Anyway, that's a side note. So we're transitioning to a mixture of the high protein feed and the calcium layer feed. And what do we do? Usually 50-50 around that time.
Yeah.
You could be more precise if you want to transition a little more gradually. But at 6 weeks, we just, we'll cut the protein food with our layer feed about half and half. And that seems to have been working fine. We've had no issues with that. It allows the hens to develop appropriately. And by, 8 weeks, we're switched out all the way? Or do we wait till 10?
I wait till 10.
Yeah, 10. Because they're still growing from 8. They're fully grown at 10 weeks.
If you're growing them...
I'm sorry, at 8 weeks to start laying eggs.
They're laying consistently by 8 weeks. They're starting at 6, typically, and then consistent by 8 if they have proper lighting and they're not stressed in any way.
And by 10 weeks, they're adult, full grown.
Yeah, and if you are raising males for processing for meat, then they can be processed at 8 weeks. But if you're raising your birds for egg laying, your hens are going to be your egg layers, or if you're breeding, you're going to be breeding them, you have males, they're going to be breeding, then it is good to raise to have them on the high protein until the 10 weeks, so then you can really get that full size.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions about this, again, stick them in the bottom either during this live or if you're watching it later and you made it through 29 minutes and 57 seconds, leave one down the bottom. Yeah, so with the meat program, if you guys are raising the birds, we usually do butchering at 8 weeks because we have a million of these things. But if you only have a handful of males that you want to do for meat, it's fine, raise them for 10 weeks. The reason I say that, and I go over this a lot with people, is that the amount of meat that you're gaining for the return of investment is what it is, because you're putting in 2 weeks of time and effort of feeding and maintaining these birds for a negligible amount of meat. I think the return, you get like an ounce or two, maybe.
Like 2 ounces, yeah.
So, but that's up to you. If you're raising a few males, I would raise them for the extra 2 weeks. If I'm raising 70 of them, no, I'm just going to do them at 8 weeks to save the food. So, but that's, individual call with that. But they're still, they're eating at that point, what is it, 8 weeks? Is that what I said, 8 weeks?
It's a process.
That's the other thing. At 8 weeks, they're still eating that expensive protein food, so.
Half and half.
Yeah. Well, if they're not eating anything, it's not that expensive. Anyway. All right, so I talked about brooder, talked about feed. I hope that feed stuff wasn't too confusing.
Yeah, and just a quick note, the calcium, that's going to aid the hens in producing those nice, strong eggshells. You don't want her to be laying eggs that are shellless, which will happen if they don't have calcium. And a shellless egg, you might not think it's a big deal, but it can burst in her body as she's in the process of making it and laying it, and that can cause internal infection. So you want nice strong shells, and then the calcium will help her egg-laying muscles be nice and strong to help prevent prolapse as well. So definitely important.
Very important stuff and simple stuff, easy stuff. You guys can do very well with these quail. They're very easy to raise. They're usually, the biggest problem I think with quail is predators. Because they're very simple to raise. If you eliminate the predator problem, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went over the brooder, the feed, and then common health issues. One of the health things, actually, which is important, why I want to talk about the chicks, is if you're going to have stunted growth, if you're going to have a whole bunch of small birds because they weren't given optimal conditions in those very formative first weeks, you may have offspring, if you're reproducing them, that are going to adapt to that lack of food that those parents had. So you can see that generational adaptation very rapidly. Like you can produce smaller birds because the parents were just smaller. Hey, Verna, what's going on?
Hi.
Saw splay laid fixed with a mason jar and a paper towel. I guess it's a mason jar. Maybe it's a mason jar.
Yeah, there are different ways to do display legs. Sometimes people will put them in they'll put them in something where they can't move really. Essentially, they can stand upright. People with chicken chicks will put them in like one of those little.
Oh right, look. What is it? Shot cups?
Yeah, shot glass. I don't drink shots, so I don't know. But anyway, you can't do that with a quail chick because they're so bouncy; they'll pop right out. But chicken chicks is just kind of sit there.
But display laid heals very rapidly.
It does, yeah.
It's not long, like a day or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, Verna said shot glass.
Yeah.
Hi, Verna. We got snow here today. Luckily, it wasn't enough to have to shovel. And I walked my pig, so she got to walk in the snow, getting food. Okay. All right. So health issues. Cleaning, like what we talked about with a clean brooder, keeping the water clean. Obviously, you don't want pathogens developing in there. Keeping the bedding clean. You don't have to take it out. Like,
I'm sorry.
You don't have to take out the bedding like we were talking about earlier, but layer it up where you're sprinkling on fresh shavings.
Yeah. The manure is acidic, so that's if they're. A brooder space is important. You want to make sure there's enough space for them in there, and you'll know if there's not enough space because they'll soil it too quick. And because they do go to the bathroom a lot because they're growing so fast, so they have to eat enough to to take care of that growth rate need. So they're going to the bathroom a good bit, and you don't want them to be laying on, walking on constantly on anything soiled. You want to be able to put the bedding down, and if it's proper size, proper amount of chicks in that space, It's
Sorry.
about 10 chicks to 1 square foot, about that. But it changes as they grow, because obviously they're getting bigger. Yeah, so you want to make sure they're able to be living on a tidy enough bedding, because that acidity in the manure, it can make their feet raw. Like, you can end up with issues that are completely preventable, and you want them to be breathing clean, fresh air. That's going to affect their quality of air. Make sure there's ventilation and such. Yeah.
We have a very big responsibility. We're trying to mimic optimal living conditions based on their native environment, which is very hard to do in a plastic box.
Yeah.
So, but like out in the wild, they're not living in their own filth. They're milling about, and they have a free range.
It's not difficult to take care of them, but you just want to make sure you're watching their behavior.
Yeah, just watch the behavior. Keep the brooder clean by appropriately, what do you call it? Stacking,
Yeah,
sprinkling the
new bedding.
The bedding and the layering. Question about bedding. Some people don't want to use the pine. They may want to use those paper pellets or the paper, you know what I'm talking about, the recycled stuff, which is usually fine.
Yeah, with the quail, you can experiment. The amount of manure that quail chicks let out is different than chicken chicks. Chicken chicks, it's going to be larger, but quail, it's wetter. Tends to be a little wetter. So as long as your bedding is absorbent enough to make sure it's, staying drier, in the floor is staying drier, then that's good. So pine shavings are really good because they are absorbent. Some people might want to use straw or something like that. Personally, I don't like straw. I might get away with using straw with my silky chicks, because the manure consistency is different. The quail, it just kind of will mat the straw down, and it doesn't absorb into the straw. So it definitely is different. The type of bedding you use, it acts different. Yeah.
Continuing with health issues, so you guys might be worried about, I guess, if you're new to birds and you're like, oh my God, am I going to get bird flu, avian influenza? So the external issues, and by external, I mean pathogens that are coming from an external source. The quail they're not as resilient, I say, with illness with chickens, but they're also not as susceptible to illness as chickens because they're pretty isolated. You're raising these things at hutch usually, and in that hutch condition, again, if it's clean and it's appropriately, maintained, they're not really going to get access to outside organisms. I mean, birds are flying around, but it's not like the quail are directly into the ground where the wild birds are feeding and leaving droppings. And especially in a brooder in the house, they're not going to be exposed to that kind of stuff. All right, so is avian flu a concern? I mean, am I personally concerned about it? I'm not going to give veterinary advice on that issue other than consult your local, whatever it is, USDA, and just monitor the health of your outdoor birds. The only other concern is cross-contamination. That's why people ask, can we come visit you? I'm like, not really, because if you're bringing material from one location to another, it's
on the bottom of your shoe.
Yeah, it's a fomite or vector. It could potentially be carrying an organism from one location to another. And the animals, where it's coming from, they may be perfectly fine. We always talk about that. The animals become adapted to the organisms that is in their area, their vicinity. They develop immunity toward it. However, another creature coming in, you're bringing in new chickens and new birds into their environment. They may get sick from what's present, and vice versa. You're bringing birds or you're bringing a contaminated item to another area. Those animals might get sick, or you might transfer a disease-causing agent.
So it is important, just side note, if you're bringing new birds to your location, then transition is stressful for any creature, including us humans. So it is important to have that quarantine time so that they're separated from your current birds. Your new birds are separated so that they have time to de-stress, get used to your feed that you're going to be giving them, get used to the sounds, the environment, for minimum 2 weeks or more before you introduce them to your current birds. That way they're not starting stressed going into that. They'll be in a calm state, acclimated, and then go into that.
Fairness, quarantine is important. It sure is. Like you
Yeah.
always tell your silky people,
Yeah.
keep them. Yeah, because now they're stressed. Their immune system may now be a little bit down because of the stress. And on top of that, there might be new organisms that they're being introduced to that they're not hardy against quite yet. So that stuff could be potentially danger. Anyway, that's a little more involved. That's different. It really doesn't pertain too much to quail. Quail are going in their hutch. So keep the
Well, it does actually still pertain.
Well,
like
I'm
it's
sorry.
the whole process of being transferred
from,
from in a
yeah.
box or a carrier, like
To the
that's
outdoor.
scary. New cage, yeah, all of that, the whole transition. It's birds in general. Yeah.
Main issue with either the chickens or the quail is keeping a clean facility. Again, it's not their natural environment. These are domesticated versions of wild creatures. And though they have the great wild outdoors to use as their giant bathroom and their place where they're eating and they're getting a variety of food and they're hardy to all kinds of organisms out there because they're eating all kinds of stuff. So now you're raising them in a very controlled environment. The least you can do is keep the controlled environment clean to make sure they don't develop disease, and also the buildup of ammonia and dust in their coop can be quite a problem for respiratory illness. Right?
It's too dusty.
As Verna's saying, NPIP is a great group to get a hold of. They can tell you when you have to worry about avian influenza. Quite right.
Yeah, that's good source. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully that's not becoming a big problem, but I don't know. I don't like to speculate too much. Every time I speculate, it winds up happening, and that ain't good. So I'm gonna speculate good stuff.
Yeah, say good stuff.
It'll be fine. Okay. Any kind of mistakes to avoid? What am I saying here? Improper bedding. You don't use the wrong. I think. What is the biggest mistakes we deal with people with their chicks?
I think the biggest thing is making sure your brooder is not overcrowded at any point because that makes life difficult for you because then you're having to add more and more bedding more often. You're going to be cleaning the water and food dishes because it's going to be getting soiled or dirty. And then the birds themselves are going to be uncomfortable and stressed, and you don't want that. So that's
And they won't all have equal access to their food.
Yeah, you just want to make sure
It's
they
too
have
crowded.
plenty of space to run around, do their thing. And really, you can tell just by how fast manure buildup happens. If it takes a while, like, more than a day, you don't have to put that much new layers. If you're just putting new layers of bedding, like maybe once a day, then it's okay. As they grow, and if it's becoming more frequent, if you have a lot of chicks, you may want to divide them and put them in 2 separate brooders because their size changes so fast. Yeah. But if you have a nice big brooder, then that's good. I think that's the biggest thing. And just making sure that they have the high protein feed and proper temperatures.
Yeah, last thing I would recommend, I always think of the kids because I like the kids. If you have little ones and they want to play with the birds, not all the time because you don't want to keep taking them in and out of the thing, but just teach kids how to handle the birds appropriately, that they're not gripping them too tight because they're fragile.
I would say, honestly, it's okay with kids holding like chicken chicks because they're bigger, they're slower, they're easier to hold, they're not hyper. Quail chicks are really small, they're bouncy, they're like popcorn, and they tend to jump right out of your hand as soon as they can possibly jump out of if you open it slightly.
Yeah.
And then they can fall and injure themselves, or if a child is trying to hold them and it jumps, they could easily get stepped on by the child. So I really would not recommend holding chicks when they're in that first, week and a half age with the quails. But the chicken chicks is fine.
However, they are wonderful experience for kids. The quail are a really good opportunity for kids to learn responsibility, and most importantly, they're going to get eggs. So they have tactile return. One important spice is great to have. Oh, the reason we're doing this is because
We're on a
using an
phone.
iPhone. Is on alum. Great for stopping bleeding issues. It's found in the spice section of the grocery store.
Oh, cool.
With alum, you won't have to remove the injured chick.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Verna, for saying that.
Yeah, we never used
Very
alum.
good tip.
I'm going to go buy that next time at the store.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're doing a chicken and quail first aid kit video. Not a live, but it's going to be a regular video for people. So if they're getting chicks or whatever from us, or if they just want to know, we can send them a video to know what to keep in their litany of health treatment accoutrement. All right, then. Cool. I think that was a fabulous, short enough video.
Yeah.
I'm usually in here for an hour, so wow, this was a short one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that will just about suffice for today's talk about brooder care. Yarrow root is great to have if you grow it. If you won't need alum. I think I did try growing that a couple times. I got a big package of weird seeds, and yarrow was in there. I don't know if it grew. Anyway, it's getting into garden season, believe it or not. I know, it's like the middle of winter.
Planning and...
But yeah, seed starts, planning where your seeds are going to go, prepping gardens. It's really that time of year.
Yeah, it comes up quick.
It does, very quickly. All right, you guys, I guess it's going to be snowy and bitterly freezing in some spots, so...
Yeah, if you guys...
keep the water liquid, not frozen water.
Yeah, your pipes too, in your house. But yeah, if you guys are new to our channel, feel free to subscribe and give us support in that way. We are still small channel growing. And thank you guys for watching, for commenting. And yeah, if you have any more comments or questions along the way, feel free to drop them in and we will be happy to answer.
Time to put your sweet potatoes in a glass of water. Start those slips. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, man. It is. I like growing the little potato slips.
Yeah, he did. He tried growing potatoes last year in a bag, and he kept adding dirt as the plant was growing to encourage more potatoes to grow. He had like 3 bags maybe, and he cracked them open, super excited at the end, and there was just a couple potatoes in each bag. He was so upset.
I do a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a crappy gardener. So like,
but you know, you try.
If you want me on your apocalypse team, do not hire me for gardener. I can get some stuff growing, and I've been doing gardens for a while, but I'm not a good gardener.
You do very good.
I do other good. I have other apocalypse skills. Gardening.
But I'm sure you learned a good bit from the first potato growth. So
I like cooking leafy greens, mustards, kales, even the basil, because I cook a lot, and I like to have those nice fresh things. Anyway, I don't want to talk about food. Chris, you can always contact me, and I will tell you how to make more. Okay, well, thank you very much. Maybe I'll do that, because, yeah, like I watched that stupid movie, Martian guy. What's it called? Stuck on Mars.
The Martian.
The Martian. All right, hold on. Before I go, I want to complain about the Martian. He goes to Mars and he gets stranded on Mars and he grows potatoes. Okay, I'm having a hard time with my potatoes.
Inside his environment.
In his environment. But here's what they don't tell you on that show: the soil in Mars, it's dust. It's dead. There's nothing in there. Nothing's going to grow.
But did he have
in the Mars potato bags?
I feel like we'll have to look again. I feel like he had stuff like bacteria and organisms and stuff to add. I think he did something.
No, maybe in the book, but at least in the movie,
I
was very upset by that. I don't like science fiction movies because he used his poop. Oh, all right. I mean, I wonder if that would work. You know, I'm going to have to ask my very good friend. I have a friend who's probably the smartest person I ever talked to. It's ChatGPT. I always ask that guy about questions like that. I'll have to look into that. Yeah. Anyway, well, I'm still giving it a thumbs down because he had good potatoes. The thing was like potatoes everywhere. Come on, man.
He was in survival mode, making food and keeping his shelter. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Yes, but human poop needs to be composted.
Thank you. All right, yeah. He needed to spend another 6 months to a year just churning feces in the Martian soil.
He had something to start, like, already, but I can't confirm because I don't remember.
No, he had a gullible audience to start. That was it. That's all. You know, the audience is there. It's like, they're going to listen. It's like when they blew up Jaws by shooting an air tank. He never would have exploded. But we invested so much time. Jaws had to explode at the end. Oh, God. You know, I'm going to watch Jaws tonight. All right, guys. Have a great week. Yes. Stay warm. And, you know, imagination is a great tool. Yes, it is. It keeps me entertained.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to push the old goodbye button.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Yes, blessings to you as well.
What? That's how Joel's ended? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Dan. Bye, you guys.
Bye.